The diner smelled of burnt coffee and fried eggs when I slid back into the booth across from Leah a week later. She had a manila folder in front of her, thick with printed emails and notes. Her expression was a mix of triumph and caution. "I found something," she said, tapping the folder with one long, painted nail. My pulse quickened. "Tell me." She flipped the folder open, spreading documents across the table like a poker hand. Nolan didn't just stumble on that story about Daniel. He was tipped off. I traced the initial contact back to a private PR consultant named Cassandra Bell. "You know who pays Cassandra?" I leaned in, heart pounding. "Eldridge," Leah said. "Mary's lawyer." There it was. Proof. Not speculation. A direct line. Leah smirked. "Your sister isn't just whispering rumors over wine glasses. She's bankrolling a full smear machine." I exhaled, relief and dread tangling inside me. Relief, because I finally had evidence. Dread, because if Mary had a professional operation behind her, this was bigger than just family spite. Daniel's reaction when I showed him Leah's findings was a sharp laugh. Of course she's running a shadow PR campaign. I should have guessed. This isn't about winning in court anymore, it's about winning in the court of public opinion. "But we can fight back now," I said, adrenaline pushing me forward. "We expose Cassandra. Show people how the lies were planted." He shook his head slowly. "Not so fast. If we jump too soon, Mary will spin it as desperation. We need a strategy. Evidence isn't just about what you have. It's about when and how you use it." He was right. But waiting felt unbearable. Every day the whispers grew louder. Every day I worried the next person I cared about would be dragged into the mud. Leah must have sensed my impatience, because she leaned across the booth during our next meeting and said quietly, "You know this goes deeper, right?" I frowned. "Deeper how?" She lowered her voice. "I pulled phone records and billing logs tied to Cassandra's firm. Guess who else she's been coordinating with?" I braced myself. 2 members of the town council. And one of the trustees who was supposed to be neutral in your father's estate. The air left my lungs. So this wasn't just Mary and her lawyer. It was an entire network, PR, local officials, even the very people who were supposed to guard father's wishes. That's why I felt like the ground kept shifting under me. Because it wasn't paranoia. It was real. I sat on the edge of my bed that night, staring at father's ledger, the threatening letter still tucked between the pages. "You knew, didn't you?" I whispered into the silence. "You saw what they were capable of." And maybe that was why he'd buried so many safeguards in the documents. He hadn't just been protecting me from Mary. He'd been protecting me from the machine she could build. The next day, I decided to test the waters. At a town charity event, I cornered one of the council members Leah had identified. A harmless conversation on the surface. Just small talk about the fundraiser. But when I casually mentioned Nolan's article and Cassandra's firm, his face drained of color. He excused himself within seconds. Confirmation. The web was real. When I got home that evening, another envelope was waiting for me. No block letters this time, just a single photograph. It showed Daniel walking into a cafe, Leah already seated inside. The angle was candid, clearly taken from across the street. On the back, scrawled in red ink, "We're watching who you trust." My stomach twisted. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was surveillance. Someone was following us, tracking us, documenting every move. I called Daniel immediately. He came over within minutes, eyes blazing when he saw the photo. "This isn't Mary working alone," he said flatly. "She's got people doing her dirty work. And if they're following you, you're not safe." But something hardened inside me then. I was tired of being hunted, tired of reacting. "They want me scared," I said quietly, gripping the photo until my knuckles whitened. "But I won't give them that satisfaction. If they're watching me, fine. I'll give them something to watch." Daniel looked at me warily. "What are you planning?" I glanced toward the ledger on the desk, Father's handwriting still guiding me like a lighthouse through the storm. "I'm planning," I said, "to stop hiding and make my next move in the open. If Mary wants a war of shadows, then I'll bring everything into the light." And for the first time, the fear inside me didn't paralyze. It burned. Into resolve. Into fire. Into a promise. I wasn't just going to defend my father's legacy anymore. I was going to dismantle the entire web trying to strangle it. The morning I decided to go public, the sky was gray and heavy with rain. It felt fitting, like even the heavens were holding their breath. Daniel tried one last time to talk me out of it. Once you step into the spotlight, there's no going back, he warned, pacing my living room. They'll come harder. They'll twist your words, drag your past, anything they can get their hands on. I looked at the photograph still lying on my desk, the one of him and Leah, taken by whoever was tailing us. They're already dragging everything. At least this way, I control the narrative. He stopped pacing, studied me. There was a flicker of pride behind his concern. Then we make sure you're ready. Leah helped me set it up. Not some formal press conference. Mary would have loved to spin that as melodrama. Instead, we arranged for me to give a statement at the community center during an already scheduled town meeting. Neutral ground. Public space. Plenty of witnesses. When the evening came, the room buzzed with curiosity. I could feel the weight of dozens of eyes on me as I walked to the podium. Neighbors, local business owners, even a few of the very council members Leah had exposed. Mary wasn't there, but her absence was louder than her presence would have been. I gripped the podium, steadying my breath. My father raised me to believe truth will stand, even when lies shout louder. Lately, I've watched lies about me, and about those who stand with me, spread like wildfire. A ripple moved through the crowd. I held up a copy of one of Nolan's articles. You've seen these stories. They make me out to be greedy, desperate. They attack Daniel, the lawyer representing me, claiming conflicts where there are none. What you don't see is how these stories begin. I laid down a second paper, Leah's evidence, carefully redacted to protect sources, but enough to show a connection between Cassandra Bell and Eldridge. They begin because someone pays for them. My sister, Mary, and her lawyer have been funneling money into a PR firm that manufactures headlines and whispers. And it doesn't stop there. Some of the very people you trust to serve this town have been working with them. Gasps cut through the room. I saw two council members stiffen, color draining from their faces. I let the silence hang before I added, "This isn't just about an inheritance. This is about truth being twisted to serve greed." And I refused to stay silent. By the time I stepped down, the air felt different. Heavy. Charged. Some people avoided my eyes, unsure of what to believe. Others clapped, quietly at first, then stronger. A few even stood. For the first time, Mary's machine had been dragged into the open. That night, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Some messages were supportive. "Proud of you, Esther. About time someone spoke up." Others were venom. *liar. "You'll regret this." But it didn't matter. For once, I wasn't just surviving Mary's tactics. I was forcing her to respond. And respond she did. The next morning, her face was splashed across every local outlet, giving a perfectly polished interview. She smiled sweetly for the cameras, denying everything. "These are sad, desperate accusations from someone who's always felt entitled," she said smoothly. "I love my sister, but I can't stand by while she slanders good people in this town." The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known her, I might have believed her myself. Daniel called me after watching it. His tone was grim but steady. "She's doing what she does best, flipping the script. But we expected that. Now we wait for the cracks." Leah, on the other hand, was more optimistic. She overplayed her hand. Once someone's forced to deny, the story has legs. People start asking questions. And Leah was right. Within days, more tips started flowing her way. Anonymous emails, whispered calls, about Cassandra's shady dealings, about Eldridge's pressure tactics. The facade was holding, but barely. That's when the next blow came. Late one night, as I sat at Father's desk reviewing documents, a stone crashed through my front window. Glass sprayed across the floor. I froze, heart hammering, then rushed forward to see a brick lying among the shards. Taped to it was another note, scrawled in the same block letters as before. "Step out of the light, or we'll put it out for you." My hands shook as I held it. They weren't just smearing me anymore. They were escalating. But instead of retreating, I felt something else surge through me. Cold, sharp resolve. If they were resorting to violence, it meant Mary's network was cracking under the pressure. I looked at the shattered glass on my floor and whispered into the night, almost to Father himself. You taught me not to bow to fear, so I won't. And with that, I knew the battle wasn't just about wills and trusts anymore. It was about survival. And I wasn't backing down. Exposure? The morning after the brick shattered my living room window, I woke to the sound of hammering. Daniel was outside, boarding up the glass with plywood. His shirt was damp with sweat, his jaw clenched tight. You should stay somewhere else for a while, he said without looking at me. I crossed my arms, hugging myself. If I run now, I give them what they want. Fear. He paused, the hammer hanging in midair. This isn't about pride, Esther. It's about safety. Whoever threw that brick isn't just writing threats. They're acting on them. I knew he was right. But the thought of leaving Father's home, the very place I was fighting to protect, felt like betrayal. So instead, I compromised. I installed cameras. Leah helped me set up motion sensors and a security system, and Daniel arranged for a deputy he trusted to drive by at night. Small measures, but enough to steady my nerves. Because I wasn't going to be chased out. Not again. Meanwhile, the fallout from my statement at the town meeting was spreading faster than I anticipated. Whispers were turning into questions. One councilman, Leah had flagged him as tied to Cassandra's firm, abruptly resigned, citing personal reasons. Another was suddenly out of town for an extended period. The cracks were widening, just like Daniel predicted. Leah grinned when she told me. Pressure makes people sloppy. They'll start looking out for themselves, not Mary. Still, Mary herself didn't falter. She doubled down on her polished charm offensive, giving interviews about her deep sorrow over our family's division. She painted me as unstable, manipulated by outsiders, even implying Daniel was coercing me for his own gain. Watching her on the screen, so poised and believable, made my stomach twist. She was lying so effortlessly, as if the truth itself had bent to her will. But then Leah called with something that changed everything. You're going to want to see this, she said, meeting me in the diner with her laptop. She pulled up a string of emails between Cassandra Bell and Eldridge. They weren't careful, overconfident, maybe even arrogant. One message in particular made my pulse race. If we can get Esther to sign early under pressure, Mary's control over the land will be ironclad. Otherwise, the trust's protective clauses trigger, and we're done. Protective clauses. I felt Father's presence like a shadow at my shoulder. He'd planned for this. He knew they'd come after me, try to corner me. That's why he'd built those safety nets. They know they can't win legally, I whispered. That's why they're throwing bricks instead of arguments. Leah nodded. And now we've got proof they were actively trying to coerce you. This isn't just civil anymore. This edges into criminal. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding with both fury and relief. Proof. Solid proof. But proof was a double-edged sword. If Mary caught wind of what we had, she'd stop at nothing to bury it. That night, sitting in the dim glow of my living room lamp, I read Father's ledger again. My fingers traced his careful handwriting, as though I could borrow his steadiness. You thought of everything, didn't you? I murmured. Even this moment. And I realized something that made my blood run cold. Mary wasn't just fighting for money or power anymore. She was fighting for survival. If Eldridge and Cassandra went down, she'd go down with them. And desperate people are dangerous. 2 days later, my fears proved right. I was driving back from the grocery store when I noticed the same car behind me for the third turn in a row. My grip tightened on the wheel. It wasn't Daniel's, and it wasn't a deputy's. When I pulled into my driveway, the car slowed down, lingered, then drove off without stopping. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. They weren't just watching me anymore. They were tailing me. I called Daniel immediately. His voice was steel. We're not waiting any longer. We take this to the DA. We put everything on record. Mary, Eldridge, Cassandra. No more shadows. Part of me trembled at the thought. If we went to the authorities, Mary would unleash hell. But another part of me, the part that remembered the brick, the whispers, the years of exile, Knew it was time. Do it, I said. My voice didn't shake. That night, as rain pattered against the boarded-up window, I sat with Father's documents spread across the table. For the first time, instead of feeling hunted, I felt prepared. They wanted me afraid. Instead, I was ready. The folder in my lap felt heavier than bricks. Inside were Father's trust documents, Leah's investigative files, and the damning emails between Cassandra and Eldridge. Proof of everything. Daniel drove us to the courthouse in silence, his jaw set, knuckles white around the steering wheel. Leah sat in the back seat, typing furiously on her laptop, drafting the narrative to accompany the evidence. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, at least not entirely. This was the moment we'd been working toward. No more whispers, no more threats scrawled on bricks. We were dragging Mary's network into the light. The district attorney's office smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. The DA himself, a tall man with a sharp gaze, listened as Daniel laid out the evidence piece by piece. "These aren't just family disputes," Daniel said, sliding the printed emails across the table. "This is a coordinated campaign to coerce my client into surrendering legally protected assets. Fraud, extortion, even intimidation tactics. It goes beyond civil litigation." The Des eyes narrowed as he read. "This Cassandra Bell, she's not local. Out of state," Leah confirmed. "PR hit jobs are her specialty. But the money trail links back here, straight to Mary and her attorney." He flipped another page, then looked up at me. "And you're prepared to testify to everything you've experienced? The threats, the harassment, the surveillance." My throat tightened, but I nodded. Yes, every word. For a long moment, he studied me, as if measuring the weight of my resolve. Finally, he leaned back. "All right, we'll open an investigation. Quietly for now, but once subpoenas go out, it won't stay quiet for long." The air left my lungs in a shaky rush. It was happening. But as we walked out of that office, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd just lit a fuse. News traveled faster than we thought. By evening, word leaked that an investigation was brewing. The same local outlets that had smeared me for weeks were now buzzing with speculation. Unconfirmed sources. Anonymous tips. Mary, of course, wasted no time. She appeared on the evening news with tears brimming in her eyes. "My heart breaks to see my sister consumed by paranoia," she said softly, hand on her chest. "This is a tragedy for our family, not a crime. I can only pray she finds peace." I almost laughed at the performance. Almost. But when I turned off the TV, the reality hit me. She wasn't going to roll over. She was going to scorch the earth if she had to. That night, Leah showed up at my door with her phone buzzing nonstop. "You're not going to like this." She turned the screen toward me. Social media feeds filled with fresh smears, fake screenshots of text messages from me, implying I'd planned to sell the land to developers. Threads claiming Daniel was funneling money offshore. Even a doctored video splicing my words from the town hall to make it look like I admitted to lying. I felt my stomach turn. They're manufacturing evidence now. Leah nodded grimly. Desperation mode. But the thing about fake stories? The more they pump them out, the more people start to question what's real. She was right, but it didn't make it easier. Each lie, each smear, felt like another cut. Daniel arrived soon after, carrying takeout containers but looking like he hadn't slept in days. He set them down without eating. "They're trying to rattle you," he said, "because the DA's office rattled them first. It means we're winning." I wanted to believe him. But when my phone buzzed again with an unknown number and I opened the message, icy dread washed over me. It wasn't words this time. It was a photo of me standing in the courthouse lobby just hours earlier. Whoever was watching me hadn't just followed. I'd been under surveillance even in the one place I thought I was safe. I showed Daniel and Leah, my hands shaking. "This isn't just about intimidation anymore," Daniel said, his voice low and furious. "They're making it clear. Nothing is off limits." Leah's eyes narrowed as she studied the photo. "But they slipped. Look at the angle, it's from inside. That means someone in the courthouse, or with access to it, is feeding them." The realization sent a chill down my spine. Mary's reach wasn't just in PR firms and council seats. It was embedded deeper, in places meant to protect me. I looked at father's documents spread across the table, at the broken window still covered with plywood, and at the two people who hadn't left my side through all of this. They want me to break, I whispered. But I won't. My voice was steadier than I felt, but as I said the words, I believed them. The storm had broken. The DA was moving. Mary's mask was cracking. The smear machine was running on fumes. But the closer we got to the truth, the more dangerous the game became. And I knew, before this was over, someone was going to lose everything. The subpoenas went out on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, the headlines weren't about me anymore. They were about Mary. Prominent family under investigation for fraud, coercion. Councilman resigns amid alleged ties to shady PR campaign. Emails reveal coordinated smear tactics. One outlet even ran the photo of the brick that had been hurled through my window, framing it as part of the intimidation campaign. For weeks, I'd been the villain of Mary's story. But now, the narrative was cracking wide open. When the DA announced formal indictments against Aldridge and Cassandra Bell, my breath caught. Cassandra had already skipped town, but the subpoenas tied her back in. Aldridge was less lucky. He was led out of his office in handcuffs, his face pale, his dignity in shreds. And Mary was summoned to testify. The courtroom smelled of varnished wood and tension. I sat with Daniel on one side, Leah behind us with her laptop ready. Mary entered flanked by attorneys, her hair perfect, her smile unshaken. She still had the aura of control, until the emails were projected on the screen for all to see. The phrases cut like knives. If we can pressure Esther to sign, her resistance could trigger protective clauses. Father's foresight, his clauses, his hand steady even from the grave. Those words turned the tide. Mary's attorney tried to object, tried to spin it as taken out of context. But the DA pressed, piece by piece, until Mary's composure wavered. I'll never forget the moment her mask slipped. Why should she get everything? She snapped, her voice rising before she caught herself. She abandoned us. She didn't deserve Father's legacy. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. That raw bitterness, stripped of polish, exposed the truth better than any email. It wasn't about protecting the family. It was about greed, about resentment, about control. In the days that followed, the DA built his case. I was called to testify, and though my hands trembled as I took the stand, my voice was steady. I told them about the letters, the threats, the smears, about the brick through my window and the car that followed me home. And finally, about Father's documents. His trust. His careful planning to shield not just the land, but me. When I stepped down, I caught Mary's eyes. For the first time, I didn't see triumph there. I saw fear. It wasn't swift. These things never are. But by the end, Aldridge was disbarred. Cassandra faced federal charges. And Mary, though shielded by high-priced attorneys, lost her credibility, her standing, and her grip on Father's estate. The trust documents held. Every clause my father had written stood like a wall. The land, the house, the legacy. They were mine to steward, not hers to strip. For the first time in years, I felt like I had room to breathe. But reclaiming what was mine didn't feel like victory in the way I expected. When I stood in the empty great hall of the estate, the sunlight pouring through tall windows, I thought of all the years wasted on bitterness. Of Mother, whose silence had cut deeper than Mary's venom. Of Mary herself, who had spent more energy destroying me than living her own life. I could have turned the land into a monument to my father's wealth. I could have sat on it, guarded it like a dragon. But that wasn't who he was. And it wasn't who I wanted to be. So I made a choice. The estate became a shelter. The house opened its doors to veterans, to women fleeing violence, to children who needed a safe place. The land grew food for the community. What had once been a battlefield for greed became a refuge for the forgotten. And for the first time, I understood Father's last gift. It wasn't the property. It wasn't the trust. It was the freedom to choose integrity over bitterness. Compassion over greed. Life over legacy. Mary never spoke to me again. I heard she moved away, her reputation trailing behind her like a shadow she couldn't shake. Mother stayed silent to the end, never apologizing, never reaching out. Some wounds don't heal. But I healed anyway. Because this story wasn't about what they took from me. It was about what I built in spite of them. And when I walk the land now, hearing laughter where once there was only silence, I know the truth. Father's legacy lives. Not in the wealth. Not in the power. But in the compassion that endures long after the greed has crumbled. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to like and hit subscribe. You will also enjoy other stories on AJ Family Drama. Until next time, bye.